What's your kind of take on Bitcoin? I know you bought some early Bitcoin, right? And you've
Yeah,
seen the
yeah,
whole history of Bitcoin over many, many years yourself. So
yeah.
what's your
I feel
take?
like I've been through the cycle of Bitcoin a number of times now. And I was one of the early big fanboys in 2011, 2012, telling all my friends and family about it. A couple people bought some with me. I remember telling people about it and just being so enamored by the possibilities and the excitement of like the future it holds, and I still have a little bit of that in me. I'm not saying I don't, but it's sort of, petered out. But I kind of view it as a quote unquote mind virus. For example, people don't even talk about the Byzantine general problem in Bitcoin. So I just feel like there's a lot being missed and maybe emotional excitement with Bitcoin. I'm not saying it's not going to turn into digital gold. I think it very well could become digital gold. But I also think, some of the skepticism is warranted. Governments aren't going to stand by. Eventually, they're going to do something, right? If it becomes a bigger and bigger threat to their monetary system, that's their power is taxation. Eventually, enough people are going to have acquired it already that maybe something happens, whether the government enforces some new restriction or wants to tax everyone's Bitcoin holdings or whatever it is, it's going to trigger some kind of like sell off. I'm not saying Bitcoin would never recover from that either. I think it's dropped like 80% like 5 times and it's recovered every time, obviously. And I just don't know the long-term future. Like you said, a lot of things are becoming more digitized. Anyway, those are sort of my thoughts. It's like I'm not sold either way. I think it's not a bad idea to have a tiny portion of your wealth in Bitcoin in case it works out and pans out to be like real digital gold in the next big thing,
Sure.
but I'm not sold on it either.
Sure. Higher prices bring up buyers. Like you've got this mania, this belief in it that's growing. You have retailers jumping on board, and you have big
Yeah.
companies like Square and PayPal enabling this. Like, would you jump on a trade and say, "Hey, I'm going to trade this from 20,000 to 30,000 at least"? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I'd consider it. I mean, there's Bitcoin futures. If I was going to do it, it would be like GBTC or Bitcoin futures probably. Historically, it seems like when it drops, that has those 80% drops, then it takes a while to recover. It doesn't recover right away. It can take a couple of years, and then it starts creeping back up. And now that Bitcoin's kind of gone up to this 20,000 mark recently and it's kind of stuck there for a while, it's hard for me to know or hard for me to predict in my mind whether it's going to go up another 10,000 or correct back down to 15 or 10,000 and just kind of stay range bound for a long time. Most people that don't have a position and study it, they study it somewhat and then they don't have a position, but they're not interested enough to study it more because they don't have a position. And then most people who study it more than a certain amount, they kind of jump on the ideological bandwagon and they buy a small position even, and then they get even more interested, once you're invested in it. So you have sort of a unique perspective that I really like in that you've studied it so much without having a position in it. It's more mainstream now than it ever was, and it's still not mainstream obviously, but it's more so than it ever has been before, right? It's more publicized, there's more media articles about it. It's shown on a ticker screen of like CNBC and Bloomberg often, for example, even, And also you have this you almost have like because of all the venture capital that's poured into the cryptocurrency space, you almost have like this whole like industry of rent seekers already created within the Bitcoin or cryptocurrency community, right? And so you have to be careful of that. Rent seekers are like the old, establishment trying to keep their lives and their purposes going, even if something new or something shows that it's not as valid as it used to be. So there's a lot of that already built into Bitcoin so quick, much faster than I've seen in any industry before, because so many venture firms, poured tons of money into it, mining rigs, all these extra ecosystem of services and different types of altcoin, but some of it, it's really good. It's really like shaking the box to see what comes from this though also. So it's like shaking the box quicker to figure out, okay, what's this Bitcoin? What is it? Let me shake it and hear it and figure it out what it is. And it'll open the box and we'll figure out what it is faster than otherwise just because of all the money that's poured into it. And I think it does a lot of good. There's a lot of good for
Yeah.
people in like Venezuela or like
Hmm.
Iran or
Yeah.
or some country that's being overrun by a government. You can store your value there and take it across borders. Ultimately, if you want it to be a store of value, you just peg it at 20,000 per Bitcoin forever and keep it there, right? If you're on that ideological train, right? you wouldn't be freaked out about it not going up ever again, but also you'd have to accept it won't go down, right? So that would be a nice purpose if it got pegged like that. But the fact that it's assuming that it's going to keep going up and up and up, that's you have to be careful of that.